And progress.
Yeah.
There you go.
So everyone has to do it. Okay. Should I have my video on? I like you guys. Turn the video. All right. So, hello. I am Matt Huida, senior engineer in AdProject, and today we're going to talk about changes in the newly released Rails 7.1. And it's actually it's a doozy. I think the last time Rails 7 came out was 2 years ago.
End of 21, I think, right?
So when you go through the changelog, it's formidable. The blog post that they released was like 5 bullet points of things, and there's like a ridiculous amount of things in here. So I went through all the change. Well, I take that back. I went through almost all of the change logs. Active record, I made it about half, maybe 2/3 through, and then I was like, man, it's enough. So, and this is going to be just a compilation of things that I found interesting. So, we'll start with number 1 here. So, Docker file. Rails will generate with a Railsified Docker file that they say is suitable to deploy with Kamal, which is 37 Signals' new build tool or deploy tool, previously known as Mursk, I believe, which is like a starts with a C, not Capistrano. Capistrano. It's like a Capistrano replacement. So that's cool. I don't really use Docker, so not really relevant to me, but I have done some upgrades and it does generate. I can confirm. It is there.
Question on it. I'm not sure how much you looked at it, but does it generate anything for database setup? Because I imagine if you're using Docker for your setup, what you have in it's going to be.
Because of Rails conventions, production environments generally using database URL as an environment variable. I have a feeling I might rely on that. But I'm hoping to get through this list, and then we're just going to like start trying some of the features. So we'll generate a new project and see what it is.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So the next one is bun support. If you don't know what bun is or haven't heard of it, it is a new JavaScript runtime. It is a node replacement. It's not like a build tool. It's not a package management tool, although it is those things. But it is not something that runs on top of Node. It is another version of the runtime. It is crazy fast. So the cool thing about it, Bun, is that the developers said, well, we already have things out in the wild that work, like package JSON and NPM scripts and things like that. So this tool shouldn't get in the way of the things that work. So it's mostly compliant with all of those things. So if you just have a package JSON, you say bun I, and it immediately installs. It's ridiculous how fast it is. So I've been using that just as just like an NPM replacement at the moment. There's some subtle differences and some weirdness that I've run into, but for the most part, it's just pretty cool.
Doesn't solve dependencies the same way. I've not looked at that.
So where did I don't.
Like a node modules.
I don't remember.
Okay, we'll find out.
So it creates a bun lock binary file versus like a package JSON lock file, which is different because it's not readable. But it is fast. So we can play around with it. And you can do that with Rails New if you just say JavaScript bun. So instead of saying like ESLint or nothing, which would just install in context, which honestly is the preferred view. If anyone, did you watch the DHH's talk, the keynote in Rails World?
Mm-hmm.
There was a funny thing there. He was talking about Bun and how much faster it was, and like even ESBuild, which was a huge improvement. And they're like, it's better than a fast build is like no build. So just having import maps just run and not having a JavaScript build process at all is insane. All right, so the next thing, auto load lib. So if you've been around Rails for a long time, you know that we used to have loading of the lib directory or auto loading of the lib directory. And then they took it away from us. And then now they're giving it back. So now when you generate a new project in your application RV, you will see config auto load lib, and it ignores specifically assets and tasks. So you shouldn't be auto loading anything in those folders anyway. So that makes sense. I honestly don't know what the lib folder is for anymore. I don't put anything in it. I've heard some rumblings from other developers about like what goes into lib now. Because I have also seen a pattern of using applib, which you're essentially doing the same thing. You're just putting an app where it would have been auto-loaded. So that's a weird one.
I've been on some, I've seen some legacy projects where service classes and the like end up in a lib folder as opposed to app slash, like as an attempt to keep the app directory pure.
Sure. So my thinking on that is originally lib was for things that were not your application that could potentially be extracted. So maybe a wrapper, maybe not even a wrapper, but like maybe say you were building your own Twitter client or something like that. You would build that in lib because that could eventually get gemified or something like that. So it worked for your application. Maybe you built it with your application, but it's not application code. That makes sense.
So like a consume code by your application, but it's
Right.
kind of on its way out.
However, like in the example you stated, like sometimes service classes end up there. To me, I would think that's your business logic. Like you have a service class that's saying this is how it deals with some logic. So that should be in app. And I generally just throw everything at models. But it really doesn't.
Yeah, I think the most common pattern I see is app services or app lib. It's another one, but
Applet, yeah. Rails has a heartbeat now. This showed up in a beta a while ago, and it's not a huge feature, but it's a nicety. Almost every production project ends up with some sort of endpoint that we can ping with a service to know it's still running. Well, now it's just a wrap that's generated for you, and you can just go to /up and it responds, and you know that your app's up and running. So that's a pretty cool one.
does it show anything on it? Or is it
Nope.
just blank?
It's in there. Yeah, I think it's just return type.
Okay.
It's not even body. The downside, though, I have run into issues where, say, the database is being wonky, but your heartbeat still says you're up, even though if you go to a page that tries to connect to the database, it's like, no, we're not up. So in that case, I will do like a quick database query on the heartbeat page just to make sure that everything's connected. I'm sure you can do something like that here, but it's nice that it's just generated for you.
I've seen manual iterations of this where they'll actually put the git shot of the commit that's running it. That's what
Like
it's
the
running on.
latest one.
So that like you have like multiple environments. You can see like which code is currently deployed, like straight from that app like this.
Oh, that's cool. All right, the next thing, IRB autocomplete. I don't know if anyone's experienced this, but IRB autocomplete in Rails 3.2, 3, maybe 3, I don't remember. It's atrocious. It's nice that it's there, but it is like it takes up your entire screen.
I have strong opinion. I don't like it.
And I immediately turn it off.
Yeah.
And now it is turned off by default for production environments, which is nice. So when you have to jump into a production console, you're not inundated with not only a weird console experience, but then to just have it blown all over the place. So that's a nice one. All right, so we're going to start stepping into some of the modules here. So, active model. Active model is where we find has secure password. Many of us have probably used this. It's a cool tool with creating some quick authentication without reaching for a library that's larger like Device. Although, in many cases, I would recommend Device because it's got hundreds of hours of dev time to make sure that it's secure. However, if you are using this, they've added a couple of cool new things. So here you can see that we have a user and we say has secure password. That gives us methods like password confirmation. Now there's a password challenge, which is cool. So if you have an update password page, you can verify that the person updating the password also knows the original. So you can send password challenge through as a param, and it will check against the current password to make sure the child's the same, and will or won't let them update.
Is it the same as entering your current password and then entering your new password? Like the current password goes into password challenge?
Yeah, so the current password would be the challenge, and then the new password would be.
Got it.
There's some more authentication stuff later, but that's actually an active record. So, we're about to get to it. So, along with keeping things secure, they've added into Active Record a normalizes tool, which is really cool. That it's a macro that says before we set stuff to the database, do something to it. And this could be, well, in this case, we're saying downcase all your email addresses. Now you know that all your email addresses in the database are downcased. And maybe you don't have to use a tool like SciText or something like that to do insensitive connection. So as you can see in the example, it's got some spaces in there, some new lines, and it's all upcase. But in the end, we will have lower cruise-control at example.com. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but very useful. There's been gems that do all of this kind of stuff for years. Why it hasn't been baked in. But that's a big one. A big one that could potentially change how you do database. As of 7.1, we now support composite primary keys in Rails versus an external library. The interesting thing about that is that a lot of Rails refers to primary key as ID. But now there's the potential for a multiple column key to be ID. So things get a little weird there. But so to set the primary key, you can just say, oops. Primary key is actually these two things versus just ID. So maybe it's ID and tenant slug or something like that. So that way you could completely isolate your database lookups based on having a multi-tenanted. Yeah. So the first one here is just showing that we can do foreign key constraints against composite primary keys now. So just some new helpers or helpers that accept the new type of primary key. Normally this would just be ID. Or, well, normally it would just look for ID. Now you're saying we're actually looking at other places. And then there was an interesting bug here for processing with in batches. So find each or in batches or batches, where your two primary key columns given a particular search order did it at the same time. It actually knew the results you were expecting. And so if you want to say that category ID, we want to find that descending, and product ID, we want ascending, we can define a order in find each. So find each is basically what batches runs on. So this will produce a correct query for that. So composite keys are cool. Do you need them all the time? Most likely not. Unless you're doing something like tenanting is a good example, because that's a reason to isolate records. This one's super cool to me because I have been a big proponent of using active record versus breaking out of active record to do SQL. So this change allows us to do some more things in active record with key value pairs versus breaking apart into a SQL fragment. So this first example is what we currently, or what we've previously had. So we would join orders, and then to select columns from orders, we had to do SQL fragments. It was our only option. You have to declare your table name, column. So because we're on customer, we still have to say customer because we're joined now, and they would be ambiguous. But then we want orders date and orders total. And then when we get the query out,
Question though, because I think if you didn't do the join, you was before the change, you would be able to put in a list of symbols for the columns you want, but you can't do that if you join a table and you're selecting ID, because ID would be ambiguous.
no, you can. So you can put a symbol for select here. You could say ID and name. Because if it's symbol ID and symbol name, it knows to look at the customer table. Because you want data off of orders, which is
Oh, I see. I know it's the order state and orders
Yeah.
total. So you just like pass the array
yeah,
ID or symbols, you won't be able to pull from the orders.
Correct.
Select. Got it.
and so this is correct. So here's one thing. When we generated this query, this is a SQL fragment. And you can tell because it is exactly what we put here. If active record would have generated this, you would have quoted table names, which we see down here. Now we are able to treat selects like we can with wheres, where you can say, you can actually, in where you can say a table name and then give it more columns to query from. Which also, I didn't put in here, but I believe that's changed as well, to use the association name instead of the table name. You can probably confirm that. But, so here we see that we are doing the same thing. We want ID and name from customers, and we want date and total from orders. And now it generates what we would expect. So that's super awesome. The other cool thing is select now allows aliases. So if you want to call something a column by a different name, you would still have to break out into a SQL fragment to say as different name. However, now they allow us to still do customers. We say ID is ID, but we say name as customer. So you can see here the customer's name now has alias as customer. That's cool, man. Questions on that?
No, I think this is fantastic. Because yeah, I've been bitten by the ambiguity issue where you're like you select you you join a table and you select ID, and I probably just wasn't doing it right, I was using strings or SQL fragments, but selecting a common column like ID and then getting there that this is ambiguous, and then having to do like orders dot or customers dot ID.
Yeah, you get that with the single thread.
And it's I like the solution where you can just, you specify the table name or the association name, and then you specify columns. It's provide more clarity to that.
Cool. So the next one is batching improvement. So we talked a little bit about batching earlier, but this is actually a performance improvement. And it's actually kind of nutty. I put it in here just because the result is interesting, not so much what it's doing. So just to put in perspective what it's doing. So we say we want users in batches of 3, and then we want to do something with it. Previously, it would go ahead and grab the users and then figure out how many IDs there were, and then literally do an in with the number of with the IDs sequentially in the amount you chose for the batch. Which is not very performant. And it's the same reason why pagination libraries tend to move from something similar to this to a greater than or less than, instead of doing an offset and limit. Now, you can see the same query we're grabbing in batches of 3. The difference is it still plucks all the IDs, but it now knows, hey, I need to do some math here and figure out, for the first batch, I need everything less than or equal to 3. For the second one, I need everything greater than 3, but less than or equal to 6. This is a much faster query. So much faster that I pasted this graph here that was in the PR to show the difference. So when you're querying, these are taking, like, look at Postgres, which is fast, 24 seconds to 5 seconds. Like, that's insane what a difference that is. So if you are doing large batch tasks, this is a huge win for you. And even in SQLite, like, so you're in-memory database, you're still getting 3-fold improvement here. Not as much for updates, but still a big win. And then also for deletes, big win. So
That's massive.
that's huge.
I think their solution probably is most performant. Something that stands out to me, having written pagination queries, is why wouldn't you? I'm sure I'm going to explain this right, but why wouldn't you do a count query first, and then do math based off of that to figure out how much to, I guess, how many times to, like, offset it or limit it.
Well, that's what the more performant ones do. So they will say, give me less than or greater than a particular ID versus give me a certain order and then offset it by so much, like offset it by, page number times offset amount.
Mhm.
And then a limit. So let's say 30 per page, limit 30. Because every single time you're scanning the table and just getting the next group versus doing something like finding out how many are there and just saying, I know how these that are greater than, less than this, greater than this. So, and this is doing a similar.
Yeah. That's clever though. Using ID is the, like, greater than or less than ID.
And that doesn't always, it's not 100% because you could have IDs that are missing. You know, probably you could jump, but I don't think they can. They made a big deal about having async queries. Nothing that I've written is like horribly slow. So I haven't run into an issue where maybe something like this would be a big deal, or maybe I just haven't tried it, seen what a difference it is. But the gist of it is certain queries that may take a long time, like math queries, counts, sums, min, max, can happen asynchronously instead of waiting for the previous query to return. So you can just fire this off and it'll come back when it comes back. So there's a bunch of them that you can now do with ActiveRecord. Pretty much the same ones that you are used to, you just throw async on it. But we'll pick a few things to try. We'll try it when we're through with this. Authenticate by. This was an interesting one that took me a second to figure out when I first heard about it. So building an authentication system, maybe you use secure password, maybe not. But generally there's some sort of authentication method that you get like this. And I think the current one is authenticate. I'd have to look it up. Actually, I should have put what generally you would say. So previously you would say user find by email address and then authenticate with password. But there's a weird trick that people can do by saying, if I was nefarious, you could say, well, I know if email doesn't exist in the system will respond right away because it can't find it. But when it does exist in the system and it's trying to authenticate with that password, it will respond in a different amount of time. And you can tell when it's a way to tell if I have a giant list of email addresses.
I'm gonna scan the app and see how many.
I'm gonna throw it against the sign-in page. Based on my response time, I could potentially tell which ones are in the system. And so authenticate by is a time-based attack method. You give them both at the same time, and it responds to you in the same amount of time. So if there's no user found with that email address, it's going to respond. It's going to halt for a small amount of time to respond the same exact time as it would if it did find it and could run that. That's just a small improvement, but kind of cool one. Something I wouldn't have thought of. Generates token form. We have I'm pretty sure there's a generates password form currently. But this is a similar method that just generates tokens. Pretty much what it says. We actually had to use something like this on a recent project, and I built my own. And then later found this was coming. But again, small improvement. This one actually has some other features, like you can see that there's an expiration in there. So you could use this to generate like a time-based email link. Maybe you wanted
Like a reset password, like
Yeah,
anything,
like,
or
it's good for 3 days.
Access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things like that. This is useful.
When you say it has an expiration, is that embedded in the token itself, like is it JWT or something, or does it just like have a separate column that, like is there a tokens table essentially?
No, it's just going to return to you a string that
Okay,
you'll save. And when it decodes it.
so it's encoded within the token itself.
Yeah. enum validation. I don't know if you use enums. I like them. I know we have mixed feelings about them in HashRocket. I don't mind Rails' implementation at all with using strings. I think it works just fine. But this improvement is nice. Now we've always had this syntax. This is normal. You declare an enum. You either give it your array of enum values, or you give it a key value. But the new thing here is that you validate, which is nice because now, previously, when you gave it something that was garbage, it wouldn't blow up. Now, if you say validate true and you give it something, you give it a value that is not one of the enums, it'll tell you. So that's good. Increment counter. These are all active record things, by the way. I don't know if anyone's seen the theme here. Increment counter. You can, there's an increment counter now that increments by 1. Now you can say how many you want. That's the difference. So it takes the column that you're incrementing, the ID of the row you want to increment, and then how many you want. Auto-generate index names. This one bit me so many times. When you try to create an index name, and then it's like, nope, sorry, it's like over the number of characters I can do. Apparently, this will no longer be an issue because it will just figure out how to shorten it and then put some crazy ID. So now I don't have to get a migration error, go readjust my migration with some sort of name that I make up, and then free it.
It has bitten me so many times too. It's too long, and you have to try to figure out what to name it.
Yeah. Where are we at here? 712? I don't know where I'll use this, but it was interesting when I was looking through the changelog. Apparently, we can now pass tuples to active record where. And just so you can see what's going on here. If I were to pass this an array of 2 keys, well, it's a hash of 2 keys, a 2-keyed key value, and then in that value, I gave it a collection, each with tuples. It would know how to update. So it would update, it would, or not update, but it would do a find. So it would find me a topic with The Alchemist and Paulo Coelho and a record with Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. It seems confusing to me. I don't know if I would use that markup to do a query.
It looks confusing to me as well, but I see like you can group like things together, like you're trying to find particular records, maybe. But yeah, the syntax is a little odd to me.
The author ID and number. This was
The old way you do this is you have like might search for a topic where title is an array of strings and author name is an array of strings.
no, because
No.
that would give you not necessarily the ones that matched. So if you did it that way, you could get potentially a record that was The Alchemist.
The Alchemist with a different author.
Right.
So like this is like a way of like pairing it. Okay.
Also, a little tidbit, like I was talking about primary key before, how we don't say ID. I noticed this in some of the newer PRs that people are referencing primary key instead of ID, because primary key would be something different than just ID. So that stuck out. This is some housekeeping stuff. If you use serializers, for like the serialized method, by default, that was taking your whatever you passed it and just YAMLing it, and throwing it in the database. That's no longer a thing. If you want to do it, you can re-enable it with config variable. However, if you want to continue serializing, there's just a slightly different signature. We used to say serialize the column name and then the type. Now you are giving the coder for a type. I've only used things like this a couple times. Generally, I will use something like header JSON to just kind of throw data in a column, then get virtual attributes. No. All right, on to action mailer. We're done with active record. Although we're not done with active record because I didn't make two whole changes, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So action mailer, the interesting thing, like mailers aren't very interesting. They do the thing. But there's some new hooks that they added in, which were interesting. Previously, if you wanted to do something before or after a mail goes out, you would have to create an observer. And now they have hooks. So you can say in your mailer that after deliver, I want to set that the thing was delivered. It's a little interesting to me because mailers tend to turn into junk drawers. At least that's what I've seen. And I don't know, I feel like I would want to isolate these to only methods that I want, but based on this syntax, I'm assuming this is like a controller and literally every method that gets called here would have this host on. But it's a thing you can do now, so that's cool. Maybe that's just be better about your mailers. Don't turn them into junk drawers. But you get the normal ones before, after, after action, and delivery.
They're kind of mimicking the model actions here in a sense.
Yeah, root controller, same thing.
Yeah.
I found this one pretty cool when I came across it. There's now a test helper for capture emails. Generally, every time I have to test some sort of email, you have to like look at the delivery action mailer deliveries
box, right?
queue
Yeah.
to see like what was put there, and I inspect it, but then it like doesn't show up sometimes. Apparently, if anything that's delivered inside the block, you'll have access to.
Hmm.
So that's cool. You can try that one out. That was mailers. Change log on mailers pretty small. There was a lot going on there. There was like barely anything, maybe a bug fix on the actual mailbox. There's no changes there. Active storage, not a huge deal, but it's nice. Previously, when you had, if you wanted to change like the size of a thing, the uploaded thing, you always had to declare the variant. But here you can predefine them now, similar to libraries of the past. So now inside the has attached, you can pass it a block and then say that you want to declare variants, so like small, medium, large, different values, and then you can just call it.
You're saying you used to have to define your variants.
Yeah, you would usually say like user file variant resize to limit 100, 100.
On the yeah, because your image tag there would that should already get the variant, but where you're setting the variant, you're saying when you did like user.attached file, that's where you would set the variant. Okay.
well, it'd be here, so what you're calling it. You'd say, in this image tag, I want to use variant, blah, blah, blah. Now, what it does is it finds and creates it. So if it's already created, it's not gonna create another one. But now, having said that, I think there's also an update. I didn't see it in the changelog. Maybe it was last version. But I believe there is a way to either preload your variants or do them in the background. I don't remember. But I remember reading that recently.
Yeah, I did something, cause I did a talk earlier this year or last year on this, and there was like there was a hack that I had to do to get it to actually push the variant that I want right away instead of building it in load time. If that's,
Yeah, because you usually have to
it's
call.
usually like lazy.
Yep.
Lazy loaded.
Yeah, I think there's a way to tell it, I want to do the variant in the background job. So similar to previous upload libraries where you would just, like when you save, they would just create all the different files. Pretty sure you can do that now. But we can look that up. Active job now has perform all later, which I guess is also a huge improvement. Again, I don't do gigantic amounts of batching. But if you had some giant collection you wanted to say perform later, you would basically have to iterate through it. It would take forever. Now you can just throw them all in active job at once. So that's an improvement. Active job also has hooks. They kind of hookified a lot of things in this version. We get similar hook here. I believe it's only after discard though, which honestly is, yeah, that's fine. Because the discard is the weird case. What do you do when there's an interface to describe when to discard a job, but there's really no recourse. So we did the same thing. We had to build an interface that says you're going to call this method when you basically build a callback system. You're going to call this method when I discard. But now I could have just done this.
I'm not familiar with this concept. Do you define when when active job treats something as a discard, like whether it failed or it expires, and they depending on your job intention?
Yeah, active job gives you the interface of retry. So you can say retry, and then usually it's like an exponential time. I think is the default. So it will try to retry, and then you can say number of times. And if it hits that number of times, just stops trying. So that's a discard. You can pass a block to that to have it execute something. That's what we ended up doing.
I have to say, it hits your retry limit, and
Yeah. So this is
scenario.
I like.
Like it kept failing.
I can do no more. Right? Options. Use the job. Oh, this is one of the big ones that flew under the radar. They introduced strict locals to Action. And especially because we take on a lot of projects that are in various states of disarray. When you're trying to refactor, you may not know where a partial is pulling its data from. So, yeah, I know there's a lot of stuff online about, who cares, you shouldn't pass everything to a partial, because I can just add instance variable and scale everywhere. Um, In my specific case, I try to isolate as much as possible. So when we do partials, we pass things instead of just relying on some global to be there. And with strict locals, you can now do that. So you say, hey, partials are all strict now by declaring an interface. So this is magic comment at the top of your partial. You say locals, and then you give it in parens, basically like keyword args. So this is now saying that this partial contact us has to accept an address and a mobile. Otherwise, it's going to blow up.
So you can't use instance variables in here at all.
You can,
Okay.
but it has to accept that.
Like it has
You
to
can have
actually
at
use
current
that.
users or current user as a helper, but you have to at least give it that.
I see.
Okay, so you're defining an interface for the partial. You can also pass it defaults, which is nice because we've run into things where like, oh, we want to pass in locals, but like sometimes maybe the value's not there. Well, now you can say, well, when the value's not there, go ahead and just do this. And you just like keyword args, you give it a value. So that's pretty simple. And then if you want to say that this accepts no locals, don't pass anything to it, you use the same syntax, you just pass it into friends. And then if you pass it local, it'll blow up too. That's pretty cool. We have now picture tags. That's a thing. Not a huge deal, but if you use picture tags in your markup now it's easier to do everything else. You wouldn't have to roll this yourself.
The first time I've seen a picture tag, has that been part of, has it been part of HTML for a while?
Yeah, so you get a picture tag, and it's kind of like a wrapper around different sources. So this is saying like I can in this order I will read a WebP, a PNG, or worst case I'll just default to the image.
Because it's just it's like an expanded image tag then. It's like
Kind of.
the picture is like your container, and the source would be like if I did image and then source.
Yep.
And it looks like here it would try each image in order, and then whichever one hits first, loads first, that's what gets rendered.
Picture. Browser will consider each child source element and choose the best match among them. No matches are found. If the browser doesn't support the picture element, the URL of image will be used. So you give it a bunch of sources, the browser says, I know which one I can use. Like in that example, WebP, not every browser. Well, I think every browser now accepts WebP. But at the time, many weren't. Chrome was the only one. So your browser would look at that and be like, oh, do that. So I'm just going to move on to the next one. So it looks like you can pass it multiple images, or you can pass it a block syntax and just do tags. And this is nothing new. It's just you're basically overriding. It looks like this is a simple helper, and this you're just completely overriding it. Picture tag with a block is probably just going to do the outside picture because you're declaring source tags right here. So you're writing the markup yourself. So honestly, it's not that much of a helper in this case because this could just be tag picture.
Yeah, you're pretty close to the HTML at that point.
So if you use the shorthand, maybe it works out. Otherwise, it would be pretty much the same as what you would write anyway. That's was me playing around earlier. That's not supposed to be. But hey, I'm reading this book. It's a pretty good book. I would check it out. recently came out. I will give a plug for a book I'm reading.
Wait, yeah, check that out.
It does a good job of going through each part of Rails. And I was gonna skip those chapters because I was like, I know this stuff. I was like, I'll read them anyway. And there's a lot of good pieces of information in there. So I would recommend just not skipping around. That's that. So, was there any questions? Let's start there.
You briefly mentioned that there might have been a change to the where clause when you're joining tables. Do you have an example of that?
Okay. Okay, so let's go over it. Rails now, RubyJax, Rails. Yeah, no PG. I don't have. I apparently didn't install Postgres yet. Let's see Postgres. I might have it initialized the database. Flat code, little notch, no server select. Pew, okay. Hmm. All right, let's do. Let's equal line. Oh, Trilogy. I didn't go over it because I don't use MySQL, but Trilogy is the new big MySQL adapter that they added. So I guess if that's a thing we use, maybe it's better than MySQL. I don't know much about it, but just be aware.
There's got to be
Well,
some
you're
kind of
right.
story behind that name. Trilogy.
Trilogy, yeah, you would think so. It might have something to do because they also, like in the last version or 2 versions ago, they introduced like multi-database connections. I have a feeling it's got something to do with that.
Gotcha.
SQLite or SQLite 2?
Did it give you Postgres by default earlier?
Yeah, Postgres is.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Why does still take this on the PG? Yeah.
They didn't put it in there. Jump out of both.
They're not giving me. Row.
Like create a project name.
Hey, great, skip test. That's. So we'll say RubyJax. There we go. Okay. So, blah, 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 jump out loud. So we will do this. Ew, I'm not. All right, so we have a fresh. Then everyone, can you see that okay, John, or should I make it bigger?
I can see it fine. What's cursor?
It's a VS Code variant with GPT built in.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so fresh Rails app. So let's take a look around. People were interested in Docker. Here we go. So this is what we generate. This is the default Docker file. We got Ruby version. We got a Ruby Slam. We have a / Rails work directory, production environments. Let's see database URL and the environments. Goes in app gets, app updates, gets, get the vips, okay. Copy gem file and the lock. Then bundle. And it's the precompile. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how this works, but I think by copying the gem file and the gem file lock separate from your application,
Well, this is so fun.
it's an efficiency thing. Like it won't redo your bundle every time like something in your code changes.
Okay.
I think that's what that's doing.
Yeah, it
So-
does layers, so that's something that doesn't normally change, so that they can make it a little faster.
So we got a bootstrap precompile. We got the secret key based dummy. What is that? Recompiling assets for production without requiring the secret Rails master key. Okay. Okay, so from base, let me do another app update. And then we install SQLite with Vips again. Interesting. Copy. From build Rails to Rails, adding Rails user. Give it Rails, Rails group. We have an entry point, Docker entry point. We expose 3000, and we start the server. What's that? Rails Docker entry point. Also adds a Docker ignore.
Go out of that Docker file for a second. So you go back up to go to SQLite or SQLite install.
So it's installing with SQLite. That may be because I installed SQLite, I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably when you specify SQLite as your database in the new.
Yeah.
Like if you
I did Postgres.
did Postgres, that would probably be Postgres. Yeah. So if you were to change SQLite to Postgres and you were using Docker, you would have to change that install to whatever Docker is.
Docker file. It says. Oh. This is Postgres app. Yeah. Yeah, so that's that. There's a doc. So just to see new things, so application has our auto lib. I didn't put it in the documentation. I didn't know how many people still use it, but secrets is deprecated. So if you're still using Rails secrets, move to credentials. Okay, so I'm gonna try that where stuff, right? So we're gonna generate Rails G model user email. Okay. Migrate. Cool. So. Rails console. Is that big enough? So user. User all. All right, we're connected. So. What do we want to try? If we got user. Let's try normalizes, right? Normalizes. We're gonna say email. Click down case. Let's see if that works. So we'll do our thing. We'll say user creates email there. Hither example. Okay. Normalize method called downcase symbol. Okay, so that was Copilot probably giving us some garbage.
It's, you have normalizes as,
Oh, is that what this is?
but maybe. This was normalized.
API, we get on Rails.
With, and then you give it a lambda.
Yeah, I knew that's how it worked. I didn't know if we could pass it a symbol and see if it was a symbol prop. So clearly it cannot. So it normalizes. And we're gonna give it this. We'll say email. Reload. There you go. That works.
Slick.
Okay, so user has
Um,
user has
I'm curious about something. If we added a validate, a validation here, I'm trying to think of a good one, but validate length of at least validate length with minimum 5 on the email, for instance. I'm assuming that will run after our normalize, like the normalize is a free validator.
work. And
Yeah,
it hasn't been touched. No.
it was touched.
hasn't
You
been touched.
gave it a capitalized, and it
Yeah, so it did,
Down
it did
case,
try to
and then it
normalize and then.
it's good.
And I think Like, it was the. Trying to say when it. Finalization one of one.
So apply to nil is defaults to false. So if you gave it a nil email, like it's not going to blow up on like strip it down case.
Whether to apply the normalization. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a thing. So what else do we do? You want to see.
So
Join-
the joins
join
you would
where's-
probably need like another table like orders or something.
So let's do Rails G. User ends. Name. Rails, VB migrate. Cool. Boy. We're going to say user. User has. Rails. First. Use what's. Okay. And. Boy created. Go. User first. So if we said user. Where. Or join. Now we want to say users where. um, This is a bad example. Because toys is
It's
the
it's
same
same
name.
table. But you well we could actually I don't know maybe I was gonna say you could like join is do like have many toys as like another table, right?
Say it has things with a class name.
The co-pilot you have on here.
That must be cool. I haven't set much up. Not cursor, because cursor does like, you can tell it to do things, which in the context of your code. It's like here, we went back and I said. Right and association. All things that. Let's see.
But I think co-pilot can do this too. Like you can take a prompt. But it looks like, it
Oh, cool.
looks like they're using OpenAI. Before, yeah.
I don't use it. Copilot is pretty good. I don't use the built-in thing in the first one. first things. Cool. So we want to say user drawings things. Get that. Still lines up. And we say where things.
Previously, this would break because it
That
would,
would break
you would
because
have to use the
the table.
choice.
Toys, so let's see, that's the worst. That's the worst.
Yeah.
There you go, another improvement.
I've been bitten by this once where I had, forget exactly what I was doing, but I had to join on the same table twice in different contexts. It was the same table, so so here would be totally ambiguous, so which wouldn't be able to.
So here we've got the same example, so let's say, we're gonna join. Well, let's do the same thing, and then we're gonna say, that only select. I'm curious if you could do a mix, so let's try name. Let's try email. See, let's just get that. So we get back. I'm curious if you can mix them, or if as soon as you want to break into the table, do you have to declare both? So ideally, I want to say things name.
That might need to be,
The other was an array.
I think it was, yeah, an array.
We can say
What if you did select name and then things name?
so we can say name. We're gonna reference it as thing name. Give us our alias. So
Not good.
it does it. So active records that come back on a select are weird because they don't always display what data is actually attached to it. So that makes it look like it didn't do it, but if you look at the query, it did do things name as thing name. So it does do the alias.
I see.
So if we look at that and say first dot thing name, and that's your word.
Yeah.
How's that coming through, John? Is that making sense?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, cool.
Will it complain about any ambiguity if, so instead of selecting the email, you select the name?
I
And
don't think so, because I'm guessing root level symbols, it's just.
it'll assume that you have the same.
So we just say this name, because now we're declaring it's. That works. Oh, interesting. There's that. Let's look at the query. So get user's name and thing's name, however, look at what it returned. That might be a bug.
Oh, because you did.
It gave me
It gave you the
a
name,
user with name of Lego,
which was from the things,
Which
choice
is-
table.
which is the toy name. So that's a bug.
Interesting.
The bug.
Okay.
Um, What else we got?
Hmm.
All right, so. After vector, we got composite primary keys. I don't really want to do that. async queries. Let's just see what that is. So we got user count. Let's say user async count.
Active record promise.
Returns to your promise.
Do you? Here's what the docs are on that. I imagine you have to give it like a lambda or something to resolve.
User async counts.
Then
Here it is. Okay. So that means we need to. Interesting. I don't know. I don't know in what case I would do that.
yeah, I never used async queries. To me, it seems. Yeah, I have to think about how this would work. So what if the execution of your code is complete in that area? I don't know.
Okay. What else we got here? Generate token form. Try that. It's Rails G migration and token to token. Branding. DB migrates. So got this, we're gonna say generates token or token. And we've done nothing but add that. User no token. Whatever. Token. One of them. Not say what. So generates token hold. Purpose expires. Last 10 characters of salt, which changes when password is up. My favorite tokens generated for a specific purpose. Token can be generated by calling generate token for on a record. Or it can be fetched by calling find by token for. For signs, the tamper approved by default tokens do not expire. They can be configured to expire. Generate token. Oh, what's the other? Generates API. API token.
So you have to use the token for
Yeah, so
class on that.
you generates token for, but then you generate token for
Oh, you do call it a feature.
user. So we'll say generates token for token.
Yeah, it expires that. Curious what that
Expires in
curious format that is.
let's say 30 seconds. I have a feeling about this. Okay. So if we reload, and we say U is user first. And so U generates token for, we'll say token. Okay, so U, that token to generate token for token. U filter the same. So you find by token, find by token for token for token. So let's try this again. So you generate token for token. Token for token. And we're gonna say so update token. Now we say find by token for token. Curious if I'm doing it wrong or if I'm getting wrong. Let's make it.
Smart enough to not find if it's already expired, maybe.
Most together. You first. All right, Kim, you. On the clock. Get that. Say update token string. You now user dot find by token token column and that token. Get that.
So
So
it proves like in about 30 seconds here, it's if you were to run that again, it's gonna come back and go because it expired.
you can't manage this. Yeah, that's how that works. It's like you can.
Does it say what format that's in? Looks like JSON web token, possibly.
Yeah, I wonder if you just put that in jwt.io, if it would decode it for you.
Enhancements to JWT. Generate token. Message verifier generate. Message verifier is defining class generated token. which is set some. Right. Was it data UTIO?
Nope.
Yeah, it's some security. Okay, so that's that. And then we can also do something with it. So if we didn't want the whole thing, we could say do, then I think we get password salt as a variable. So then we can say, well, give the last 10. That's 10. Load. First. Password salt. Was that passed into the block variable? Where's password salt? That's the characters of passwords.
Is that part of has secure password?
It is, yeah. So it's creating a token based on the password solving pad. I don't have secure password in here, so I don't have. That's why it's relying on the column to do that. So we could say like.
So what's returned from that block, is that what gets set as the token, or is that just what gets printed?
Let's find out. So you know the email. So we can user and then generate a token. So yeah, it generates
full token.
It generates a token based on some value you give it. If you have a block, otherwise it just doesn't.
That's confusing. So that's the data that's in the block. Like whenever that's decoded, it has that email thing in it now.
I guess.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're just using it to do a find, then it's irrelevant. What's
Right.
inside of it goes. Okay. So that's fine. What else we got? Enums.
Validation.
Oh yeah. So we're gonna say toy names. Name only be Lego. There we go. So that works for me. Okay, so if we go through here, we reload, we say toy name. Toy new. PlayStation. Okay, so try to save it. Interesting. User will see this. Okay, that's fine. So if we say PlayStation, bang, it should set. Oh, it did already. Just gonna save it.
Can you change it to something else like you did, like feed out Lego thing?
Yeah, so I can change the T name, whoops, or hoops, whatever.
Yeah, you got the error. It's not valid.
Ooh. Not a valid name, but we didn't say the valid. Okay, so we get it.
Go back to the example on the slide. Didn't remember they didn't have like
It's a valid.
you define the keys. I don't remember.
That's just a different way to validate. So I always do things, I always validate or define enums by key values, not arrays. key difference is if you change, so what that's gonna do is gonna say that in progress is 0 and completed is 1.
That treat as an integer.
Yeah,
value.
if someone ever flips that, your enums are screwed.
Oh,
So I always define them as key values, and you say, it doesn't matter if you reorder keys or whatever, it is what it is. So I never declare it that way, but that's irrelevant. It's the third part to say validation. So I wonder, I can't imagine it's validate by default. Let's put it in here. Oh, yeah. Rails console, little screen. We got a toy. Last. Toy. So you want to say t dot name is equal to my. Interesting. What if I bypass this stuff? T of I. I said, what? Oh, maybe that's the difference. It's an argument error. Is that what the example said? No, it just said valid is false. So it's blowing up an argument error.
what if you,
saying
what if you
can't
did,
do it.
it's weird that you can't even assign it. What if you did,
So we say that.
if you try to assign attributes, is that still Rails?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You should just hit hash and then,
It's a T attributes. Is it T? Okay.
still,
Yeah, it's just argument error. We gotta reload. Now we have that. And we say T name is equal to. Weird one. Can't imagine it changed since the PR. Let's follow the example. Enum. Oh, they're doing a new one. They're not changing the system. Toy new name. And values. True must be right. The hash one already.
I mean, does it have to do with the fact that we have string values as our, for our enums instead of the integer things?
It should. We can try. It doesn't matter.
Or out the validate, this would be invalid.
Well,
Well, that'll be invalid because of the missing user anyway.
oh, it does say inclusion from value on. So first. T valid. Yeah, it's still that. So we still have the validate. That's interesting. It's all the time. They don't put it in. So weird,
Yeah,
but if I give it the valid one. On. Ooh. That's weird.
but the Barbie name,
Yeah, well, it's showing me the name. I'm
That's-
curious if what would we get saved? So that's always the weird part. So if I say what got saved was.
I was thinking that was-
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's interesting. The passing it, the hash makes it work differently.
yeah, I'm not sure if it's like a bug with our setup, but it seems like,
They're acting differently.
yeah. 'Cause it seems like disrupted, it's, throw an argument error for passing the wrong thing for validation.
All right, we got anything else we know again? Any other last question? John, you got anything?
Now it just makes me want to do Ruby and Rails again.
Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, there's some stuff here I wanna dive into. I wanna
Yeah.
check out the packet storage stuff and my own time. I'm curious about that, being able to force save, variants.
Yeah, so you get this by default. Um,
Oh, the top
So-
page.
so if we. If we,
And that's
Mhm.
cool too, because like I've had to, manually create those, and I had two different health checks. One would check that the app is up, and the other one would check that the app is up and can connect to the database. Because we actually ran into times when the app was running, but it couldn't talk to the database.
yeah, that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah,
So it returns,
You can probably just do like a user dot connection or something, right?
I think
Whatever your-
I think for
Or
mine I
take-
did I did like a select from select sysdate from dual, which is for Oracle, just gets the date and that let me know it was connected.
so you can totally do that, like, look what it's doing, it's rendering health controller show, which means.
Mm.
You should have a health controller, or
You can just overwrite the template and do whatever you want. So like, let's do that, so it's health controller show. Just curious if we have to put it under Rails namespace, so let's see. We'll say use. Say, oh, rendering HTML template. Let's try this. The. Without being that, I'm sure there's some template that you can overload. It's just looking normal rails, just looking for that.
Yeah, but I feel like that's something that lots of people might want to extend in some way to show some health stats. Well, you can define your own path.
Rails health show. Yeah. We are on the right thing. Well, any newly generated will have a health check / up. You can configure the path to be anything. Health check will now be accessible. Yeah. See, place Rails health show.
You have to restart the server when you add a view like that by chance? I don't think you have to do that.
Oh, I said Rails. Sure.
Oh.
That's why I overlooked. Endpoint does not reflect the status of your application's dependencies such as database or cluster. Replace Rails help show with your own controller action. Oh, I think they can do this. Replace this with your own controller action if you want to do something.
Yeah, that's whatever endpoint you tag is the Rails health check.
Yeah. So that would be, that's fine. So we'll say we'll make. So we'll say controller. Oh. So.
You're going to name that controller as health controller.
Oh, help control.
Yeah, you just have it named as health right now.
Oh, really? Right. No. Yeah, so we did that show and user. Now, we go with the server, we should probably see the query. Get up user count, so that would be. There's nothing groundbreaking, it's just what we do now, it's just better for you by default.
Yeah, very convenient.
Yeah.
Alrighty, any last questions or comments?
They
No.
packed a lot in.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I gotta add another book to my list.
Yeah, same.
Alrighty, well, thank you
Right.
all for coming along.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
for-
It's pretty cool. I'm gonna stop
All right.
recording.
Stop the recording.
As soon as I find the button.